welcome to Thursday's episode of the 905 Roundup. I'm Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And quite a bunged up sounding Joel McLeod this week. You sound less than your usual chirpy, perky stealth Joel.
As you said, when the mask came off, the bugs went flying, and my kids came home from school with a nasty cold. And I got it. I just so everyone knows, I did test for COVID, and it came back negative. So small blessings, I suppose. But it's not fun. And my wife and I were noticing that as soon as the maskings were lifted, all of a sudden all these old little bugs that we had conveniently avoided for 2 years, well, they're back.
Yeah, it's been nice. Most of us have gone through a couple of years without having any illness of any kind. And I mean, we're not going to have another COVID episode today necessarily, but it's funny how that now the pandemic is over, I suddenly know a whole bunch of people who have it or are in the process of recovering from it, including people with serious health concerns who stayed at home for months and months and months and months.
But it's completely unrelated to each other.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to keep this one short and sweet, everybody, to let poor Joel get away and get over the whatever lurgy is that he's picked up. But we thought we'd quickly address something that the two of us are kind of somewhat familiar with from our time in politics, which is nomination meetings. And the NDP has now deselected another MPP, a sitting MPP, which is not something other parties do. Deselecting the idea of being able to challenge an incumbent MPP is not something I believe any other parties have as within their rules. However, the Ontario NDP does and has done for a long time. And so one of its few black MPPs, Kevin Yarde in Brampton North, has been challenged by another member, and that person won. And so someone elected by, I would guess somewhere around 20,000 voters in Brampton, has now been kicked out by, according to him, about 150 members of the NDP membership, which just kind of raised in my mind kind of something which the public probably doesn't know, because we tend to think there's a cliche that party members voting for a candidate at a local level is somehow democratic and somehow, it's free from the party leader, and, that's how we get the best candidates. We just let the members decide and the grassroots. And my kind of honest reaction to that is bullshit. There's no way that the average riding association has any business choosing politicians, and actually they're very bad at it very often, and they can select the wrong people. And there's a reason why political parties actually aren't very democratic and don't necessarily benefit from being very democratic, and that's because politicians are professionals. We need professional people to do the damn job right.
Well, if you look at it, look who are in between elections, who makes up a riding association, and it's taking the veil off, take a look behind the curtain, I guess. The people who run riding associations are average Joe people. They're not politically savvy necessarily. They're not top-notch insiders. I think some people think it's like these party bosses of a riding, for the Liberals or the NDP or the Tories, and they're all like, I got my fingers in everything. And 9 times out of 10, that's not what happens. It's usually somebody's hobby. It's viewed more as a social club than like a political party. And and then every 4 years, we have an election. Okay, we got to pick a candidate. And my experience was always, a lot of these people felt like they were in over their heads. They want to attract somebody who's going to be energetic and have a good voice or a good opinion about the problems of the riding or whatever have you. And they just don't know how to pitch it to people, and yeah, that's ultimately a problem.
It's a misunderstanding of kind of democracy and grassroots. I just sort of laid into kind of the idea of amateurs, and I was one of those amateurs. I want to make it clear. And I always used to laugh when there'd be some scandal or other in some party or other, and it'd be like, a high up person in such and such a party who is the vice president of blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, I've been the vice president of blah blah blah. I'm not high up in anything. like no one knows who I am. No one remembers my name. They're giving me a title because no one else wants to do it.
Pretty much.
The real, when the Liberals were in government, the real work was done by staffers, because, damn it, they're professional and they're getting paid to do it. This is a much better way of handling things. When you're out of government, you're in a tougher situation.
The staffer, like the 20, 30-year-old staffer for a minister or an MPP, they're paid to do that for 8, 9, 10, sometimes like 12 hours a day. Like, they're meant to read the detailed, boring briefs and the policy documents that the rest of us don't really read. Like, we just don't have time for it, because we're like, no, we have jobs to live, families to provide for, we want to live our lives. These are the people who are paid. Like, no, my job is I sit in a room and I read policy papers, and I meet with academics and business people and entrepreneurs and the leaders who are shaping the issues of Ontario and Canada and Burlington or wherever you live. And like, riding associations are just these kind of weird, antiquated, like, it's the illusion of democracy.
Yeah. And actually,
yeah.
I don't think anybody would run local party politics that way if it wasn't written into the law. So when I was still involved with the Liberals, and I don't think I'm telling anything out of turn here or anything that reflects badly on anybody, but it seemed to be, that there are some very weak, or there were in those days, let's not talk about now, I have no idea. There were in those days some obviously very weak riding associations in the Hamilton area. And, it was my volunteer job. Part of my volunteer job was to try and help rebuild them. And the obvious thing to do was like, well, let's get rid, let's not try and have 5 different riding associations all trying to reproduce things when they've got like 10 members each. Let's just have one big area riding association. We can actually operate, like you say, basically like a social club, because that's what most people want from party membership. They want to meet friends. They want to feel they're contributing something valuable. But you can't actually do that. You can't do it because the law says you have to have a riding association that matches the electoral district. Right. And then that ties to all your finances. So you can't cooperate with another riding association because then your finances get in a mess. You can't do that. So it's a real problem. And I think any healthy, the mainstream parties, all of them, would probably say they have about 30% reasonably strong riding associations, 30% which are on the edge, and 30% that are dead, and that hardly exist in any real sense. And that would go for any mainstream party. And those proportions are probably getting worse all the time, because fewer and fewer people want to be involved in party politics because it's so, it's discredited in so many ways. Yeah. Or if you want to be a volunteer, if you want to be an activist, you join Greenpeace, or you join another kind of volunteer organization rather than a mainstream party. And I think that's regrettable in a lot of ways, but it's not going to change anytime soon. So you're left with riding associations which on a good day have 150 members,
right,
but actually in the general course of things might have 20, 30, and they're choosing the future MPP, and we're saying that that's democracy. No, it's not, and it opens the whole system up to interest groups abusing that system, because it's very easy to sign up 100 friends.
That's what I was going to say. Is like, that's where you get these crackpot left wing or right wing groups coming in and saying, "No, we want to run things out." It's a recipe for disaster, because a lot of the time, again, people aren't politically savvy to say, "Oh, we need to protect our membership or our numbers or whatnot, they just they just don't think of it, because again, it's a more of a social club than it is a political entity.
Yeah. And I mean, I have zero insight into what happened in Mr. Yarde's Riding Association in Brampton. Not a clue. If I had to guess, I would say that the chap who has replaced him,
his name is Sandeep Singh.
Okay, so I would say Sandeep probably has a lot of friends in Brampton and relatives and whatever, and he would have said, "Hey, look, we don't need to sign up that many people to get this guy out and to make me the potential next MPP. You sign up 100 people. If there's 50 that support Yarde and I've got 100, I win. Well, hey, it's not difficult, and it happens a lot. And don't get me wrong, no criticism whatsoever of people using the rules that are in place to their advantage. They're entirely entitled to do that. Good luck to them. And basically, they're showing that they're good organizers. So great,
right.
If an incumbent MPP can't sign up 150 members to make sure he doesn't lose a nomination, then there's a problem. That's pretty poor showing.
But the excuse me, the dangers I see happening here are what we saw in the States. If people recall back 20 years ago when this little thing called the Tea Party showed up, and people are like, "Oh, it's just a group of grassroots people complaining about government overreach or whatever have you." And their biggest threat was that they were able to mobilize, and they did what was known as primarying Republicans. So you had any moderate Republican, anyone who was right of center, but let's just be honest, not a dick. But they weren't socially conservative. They weren't evangelical enough, or just batshit crazy enough. The Tea Party would come in and say, "No, we're kicking you out. It doesn't matter if you've been there for 2-3 terms already. It doesn't matter if your track record as a good representative for your constituents was good." They were like, "No, we want the seat. We want to kick you out." And they would just come in, and they don't have riding associations in the States, obviously, but it's the same. The principle applies. Is that they had a weak organization on the ground. They were able to come in, kick out the existing sitting MP representative, and elect some kooky crackpot, and that just slowly declines into what we have now south of the border. And that's my worry, is the political parties don't take this seriously enough. And that's something that I saw when I worked at the party, was you'd see riding associations, like the riding associations would love nomination battles because it was the only way for them to raise money. They would go and people would sign up members at $10 a pop, and you just see this a huge swell of money coming into their coffers right before an election. They're like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever," and that money blinded them to the risk of, yeah, but now you might have 2, 3, maybe 5,000 members that how well do you know them, right? Also, it runs the risk too much of getting, you let, it's happened before where you have, a far right or a fringe group take over and say, no, we're going to push our agenda into the party platform messaging. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not like, oh, they tried and they fail. Okay, they've gone away. No, this is incrementalism in its most insidious form of just, okay, let's go and, we'll as long as we get our members in, we can change party policy at AGMs, and we can elect enough people to positions of power.
And you and I both know that the riding association takeovers happen regularly.
Oh yeah.
It's a regular, and to an extent, in theory, it's fine. It's like, well, if you want to run a riding association that badly, good luck to you. You're motivated. Awesome. That's the kind of volunteer we want. In practice, you get people who want to do it for reasons which are not connected with wanting to run a riding association. Let's put it that way. It's talking about getting the nomination for an election in the future. And it again, not suggesting for a moment that anybody's doing anything that isn't within the rules. They absolutely are.
No, these are the rules. This is absolutely legal and on par. It's just not smart.
yeah, it's not necessarily, and it's not necessarily good. I don't think it's necessarily good for. It's not necessarily good for the parties, and I think this is something that happens in every party. I mean, this is the NDP. You could point to examples in the PCs. You could certainly point to examples in the Liberals. I think actually back in the 90s, the federal Liberals, there's a term for this, which is entryism, which is, special interests trying to take over. And I think they actually, they were the kind of campaign life, anti-abortion, pro-life people made a sort of concerted attempt to do this to the Liberals, and they kind of at that point, changed their constitution or whatever to prevent it from happening. But it happens in less formal ways regularly. Well, not usually about a single cause, but about a politician with ambition trying to get themselves.
Well, let's look at it this way. Like the problem is that if this happens at the local level, it raises questions to how strong is your leader and and what's going on at the leader's office. Because, for example, let's look at the NDP situation here with Kevin Yarde losing to Sandeep Singh. Now, the NDP tells us that, they don't have any say over the nomination process. The leader doesn't have any say. And the Toronto Star, Robert Benzie's article quotes here, and I'm quoting here, former NDP MPP Paul Ferreira, once a top staffer in Horwath's office, insisted on Twitter that the leader's office is always aware of nomination fights. For Horwath to say she wasn't involved or aware is BS, wrote Ferreira.
And that's true. In any parties I'm aware of, it would be BS, that's for sure. And there's no leadership isn't paying attention. Yeah,
you're not paying attention. Something happened here. Either they knew it was happening and they just said, "Forget it, we don't care," or they possibly just didn't see it. And the reason why I say they didn't see it is, Roland, you and I have had these conversations about the Liberal candidate here in Burlington, how she won her seat, which was completely fair and legitimate and by the rules, but it surprised the hell out of us because we were sitting going, "Who is this girl who came in and won the nomination?" We thought it was going to come down between Andrea Gabrons was going to win it, but she came in and just signed up a couple hundred people, and they turned up and voted her as the candidate. I'm puzzled as to why Stephen Del Duca and the Central Party office would be comfortable with her being the candidate over somebody like Elisa Kearns or Andrea Gabrons to be that candidate. Because, it's one of those things that we just kind of scratch our heads like, what was going on here? And I think it's one of those cases like, you take your eyes off the ball, you take your eyes off the prize, or you don't have a tight rein or tight fist on the reins. This is what happens, is that these nominations, they get away from you.
Oh yeah, and I don't want to particularly talk about I don't particularly want to talk about that nomination in particular, but again, you get nominated, you get the most people to sign up. Those are the rules. Congratulations, well done. You deserve to win because you've won under the rules. But we also know that the Central Party has traditionally, in every party, had a pretty strong veto, and that veto is usually expressed through the green lighting process. It was called the green light process. You're allowed. The Central Party decides if you're allowed to stand for a nomination or not, and they can also control when a nomination meeting is held. And traditionally, someone who wants to get nominated will find that the meeting is never called, and then it's suddenly called at the last minute, and they're given 10 days to sign up all the members, and it's too late. And this happens all over the place all the time. These are the ways that nomination meetings are controlled. But again, the 150, or on a good day, 500, on a really, really good day, 1,000 members of a writing association sign up to vote for a member, they're basically not remotely representative of the riding. They're not remotely qualified to say this is what the riding is going to want. This is the kind of candidate. I mean, we see it through It's amazing how often parties are very bad at selecting the obvious slam dunk person who should be the leader. I mean, the CPC are kind of the case in point at the moment. It's like, seriously, you're going to pick that jackass?
I think the age of party membership should be done away with in this country. I'm more along the line of you can pay to be a member if you're that interested in party politics. You can. Keep paying, but I think the nomination for a party's member should be like what's done in the States. Anybody can show up to a meeting and cast a vote. You can get the membership, like the list of people in the riding from Elections Ontario just as easily. How the parties hold on to them because that's.
The bizarre thing in the States, I mean, in some states, I believe that, you can be a registered Republican and vote in a Democratic primary.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I don't see the problem. I mean, when you've got mass voting like that. Now, I mean, it means the US elections last 4 years, basically, or appear to be never ending to most of us. But on the other hand, and also, I mean, I always make the point that I suspect I would not have been surprised if the federal Liberal Party had a leadership contest under the old rules. I suspect there would have been a good chance that Justin Trudeau would not have won that nomination because the rank and file members had much stronger ties in some cases to some of the other people who were running, whose names most people won't even remember now. Now, maybe he would have done, maybe he wouldn't have done it. It would have been a lot closer, whereas the system, which basically allowed anybody who wanted to vote, produced someone who was, literally the savior of the federal Liberal Party at that time. And I say that without passing any judgment about his subsequent qualities or otherwise. But obviously, the Liberals were in third place and they jumped second place and formed a government. It was the right guy to pick for the job at that time. And it was in large part down to the fact that they abolished traditional memberships, I think, that happened. And certainly this business of deselecting a sitting MPP for no reason other than the members have decided, it's very dubious, and I don't think there's anything democratic about it. I already don't. Anyway, with that, we've probably gone on more than long enough, but it's an interesting subject and one that probably doesn't feature much in the press. But I think we should let you escape, Joel, now and go to bed with a bottle of lemon sip and a whatever.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Or a hot toddy or something.
Yeah.
And we'll be back next week, as usual, with another episode of the 905er podcast. Until then, goodbye and thank you very much.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.